Hi, I'm Kerry Williams, and I'm a woman on a mission to help as many women as possible uncover their passions and discover their purpose. This is the Dreamers, Setters and Go-Getters show. Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of the Dreamers, Setters and Go-Getters show. As it says in the little intro, my name's Kerry Williams, and I'm a woman on a mission to help as many women as possible uncover their passions and discover their purpose. Before we go into this week's episode, just want to discuss something that I just found quite interesting, really. I went on a trip with my son's school, to a place in Devon in the United Kingdom, in Torquay, called Kent's Cavern. Basically, it's a series of caves that have been there since the Stone Age, and I found it absolutely fascinating. My son didn't; he found it boring, but I found it fascinating. And there was just one minor thing in particular that I found really, really interesting was the lady who was showing us around the caves and everything showed us a hand axe. And this hand axe went back to the Stone Age. It went back to somewhere between 200,000, 400,000 years. That essentially sort of, I think Neanderthals used back then. And also, they're way smarter than we gave them credit for. Neanderthals were actually bigger brained than we were, and they were probably more intelligent than Homo sapiens. But anyway, this hand axe was just a tiny little thing, but it was a left-handed hand axe. And for some reason, I found that utterly fascinating, because looking back through various things in history, and if you speak to people in their 60s, 70s, 80s now that are left-handed, you would have found they were kind of treated like a weirdo when they were at school by the teachers. And a lot of times the teachers actually tried to get them to use their right hand instead of their left, which is obviously the dominant hand. And because for some reason, throughout elements of history, left-handedness has been considered freakish. It was another one of the strange reasons. I always seem to go back to the witch trials. Some women got executed for being witches, or tried for being witches, if they were left-handed. But this left-handed hand axe went back sort of over 200,000 years ago, which indicates that people have always been left-handed. I mean, obviously right-handed as well, but left-handed isn't actually that weird. And I don't know, I just found that really, really interesting. But also to realise that these humans, on a different topic here, these not humans, Neanderthals, humanoid, basically Homo sapiens are a species of, I suppose, sort of humanoid life forms. I don't know what the actual expression is, but so in Neanderthals, there was another species of us. Like you didn't get different species of dogs, we're a species of human, essentially, as are Neanderthals. But to think that they were there, definitely in those caves, where I was standing over 200,000 years ago, again, just brings it home about that whole thing I was saying in the previous episode about what a short amount of time we're actually here for. They were there 200,000 years ago. She mentioned 400,000 years ago at some point in the tour. And we're here now for 80, maybe 100 years if we're lucky. You know, if we're lucky considering, you know, continue living for that long and not die of an accident. So, as I said before, if you're living your life, very, very short life now, the little mistakes you make what people who don't matter to you think really don't matter. You're not here for that long, so you might as well make the most of it. Anyway, this week's episode, as you probably saw from the title, I have entitled The Victim Trap, and it's about what it is and why so many people seem to be stuck in it. And this isn't so much related to my usual topic of life purpose, mindset, that sort of thing. It kind of is as well, it does fall into it. But this is actually this is a bit of a rant episode. Episode 2, and I'm already going into a rant. But funny, some of my friends find my rants really funny, so hopefully you will too. But the victim trap is just something that I have noticed in society, Western society, and I'm kind of fed up a bit. And I wanted to explain why, and to help people maybe identify if they are stuck in it or potentially going to be stuck in it. But more importantly, to identify other people that are not just stuck in it, but reveling in it, actually living their lives, getting what they want by claiming to be victims of things when they're not. And this isn't about faking things that have happened to you, although I do know somebody that does that, but that's irrelevant. This is about just basically acting like your life is harder than it is, claiming that your feelings are going to get hurt. It's that whole thing of where people take offence for no logical reason to take the control back. But it's very, very prevalent in the Western world. There are people with perfectly normal, happy lives that are acting like more victims than children living on the streets in India. You know, this is absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, the reason for this episode is basically to explain how the victim mindset affects your personal growth and society as a whole. And just wanted to give a bit of an overview of why I feel people fall into what I've named the victim trap. I also have something I named the normal trap, but we'll get into that in another video. But the victim trap is something I've recently named. I don't know, someone else may call it that, I'm not sure. So I think I'll just explain what the victim trap is, but I can explain this from a perspective of a lot of the time in society at the moment we are, and I'm not going to go too deep into this because I'll be accused of being alt-right or something like that, which is actually the polar opposite of what I am actually, is people trying to create differences in themselves to act like they're a persecuted minority, when really it's not that. It's people in their late teens and early 20s trying to find their place in society, and then people older than that just being straight up attention seeking and controlling. But too many of us seem to be doing that. And this is all very easy for a somebody who is white, middle class, straight, to a certain degree anyway. I don't like the expression, but it works in this case, cisgender. It's very easy for me to sit here and say this. But there are people who are in one of those other groups that is not me. I'm not talking white men here. But black people, gay people, trans people. We won't bring disabled people into this because most of the time they don't actually play the victim, I found, unless they have Munchausen's. But if people are genuinely disabled or something, they don't tend to play the victim. That's the brilliant thing about this. They tend to just get on with their lives and are absolutely brilliant and extremely inspiring a lot of the time. But people who are, I will go with trans because there's a whole thing on the trans community at the moment, not so much trans men but trans women, where they are trying to take traits of being a biological woman and reducing them down to chest feeders and pregnant person, womb owner, that sort of thing. And anybody who questions them is known as transphobic, which is just not the case at all. For a biological woman as myself, I'm very proud of the fact that I'm a female. I own my femininity, and I also have some masculine traits because I'm a human and we are complex. But I don't like people taking away my personal experience as a female, and that probably sounds entitled, but I have PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder. If you go on my Instagram, scroll quite a long way back, I did an entire section on PMDD. It's horrific. I spend at least, actually it was really good this week. I did this month. I only had a few days, but usually it will last at least 5 to 7 days in the luteal phase of my cycle. So basically the point just after ovulation, before you get into kind of your premenstrual phase, where your temperature has gone right up and then it's starting to drop back down again. And I get extremely, basically my husband describes it as I'm an island. I lack affection, I lack tolerance, I feel extremely depressed. I've had quite dark thoughts in the past, quite frequently. I'm not going to act on them. And it is horrific, and it is due to, I think it's something to do with progesterone. Unfortunately, I don't know exactly what causes it, but it's horrific. And it's an experience I get as being a biological woman. And people who are trans and having the hormones, yes, it's brutal, it's horrible, but it's not the same thing. But they, on this, are destroying the feminine experience. Not all of them, obviously. Loads of them are amazing. There's a few. You just go on TikTok, you'll find them. You'll get angry with them probably, like I did. But they will act like they're the victim. Like they're the ones being put upon. They're the ones being held back and nobody's understanding them or understanding the experience while they're crushing someone else's. And this is an epitome of the victim trap. It isn't just this that bothered me recently. Loads of things have contributed to this. I've just come on here to have this conversation. But they will act like they are the victim. They are the ones being repressed. They are the ones being held back purely by pushing back on somebody else and acting like if you argue with them, then you're being horrible, you're being evil, you're being transphobic, which is just not the case at all. But that's a good example of the victim trap. I had another case in a previous job I was working in where we had a particular program that had been put onto the computers and it didn't work properly, and it was down to the HR department had done this. So people were speaking to the HR department. I spoke to the HR department. I said, this app's terrible. This app's terrible. It doesn't work. It's making it really stressful. And all I got back was, oh, don't you start. I've had loads of people saying this to me this week. And this is the problem right here. They made it more of an issue that somebody had called them out on making a poor decision than actually getting the fact it was causing a load of other people a problem and doing something about it. And this is a big thing with the victim trap. It twists the narrative. It makes it so that you're being the bad person for pointing something out rather than them just sorting it in the first place. And it is a way of avoiding doing things. And from a life purpose, mindset, area of living your best life, if you are stuck in the victim trap, in a victim mindset, you are never, ever, ever going to improve your life. You are constantly going to blame everybody else. You're never going to take ownership. You're never going to change anything about yourself. I'll give you another good example. There's another completely different workplace I worked at, and I worked for slightly under another woman, and she was very controlling, very micromanaging. So you can see why I don't work in the work. I avoid being in the workplace anymore, because I've had this experience way too many times. Maybe it's me. The problem, it's me. But in this occasion, it was definitely not. And I worked in doing accounts things, and this was regarding an invoice. She had put an invoice onto the system. She was higher than me in the company. She was my team leader. She wasn't my manager, but very much acted like she was my manager, and she could just tell me what to do all the time. It actually got to the point where she wouldn't let me speak to any other members of staff at work, because every time I just told her for chatting, and it was literally, I'm not just saying, I'm not being I appreciate the irony that I'm not the victim, but she literally stopped me. It was just a horrible place to work by then. And on one occasion, I was going through something to do with invoices, and I pointed out that she put an invoice on wrong. Now, I didn't do this to get at her, to point out that she'd made a mistake. I did this because she was higher in the company than me, and she had access to other things, and she knew how to rectify these situations. I didn't want a knock-on effect of things, the bad outcomes of this. We were going to pay the supplier incorrectly. It was going to cock up everything in the accounting system, whatever it was. It was that sort of situation. So I pointed out to her in the sense of, I found this mistake, can you rectify it, type thing. And all I got back from her was, I'm not infallible, Kerry. And it was like, this is not the point of this. I'm not doing this to tell you you've made a mistake. I don't relish in telling people they've made mistakes. I wanted her to rectify the situation so it didn't get worse. So it didn't come back on her. But there she was, being the victim. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. So many people will not rectify a situation. They would rather act like you're being mean to them than just rectify and get it sorted. And this is the problem we have a lot of times with people not going anywhere with their lives and end up stuck in ruts where they are miserable. People don't rectify the mistake. They don't learn from their mistakes. They just go on through, and every time someone points out the mistake, it's all, woe is me, aren't I terrible? Oh, look at all these mistakes I make. You're so horrible for pointing them out to me. Whereas actually, if you just learn from your mistakes, if you accepted that we are all infallible, no, we're not all infallible, we're all fallible. We all make mistakes. We're all human. We're all here living our human experiences. Nobody goes through life being perfect. I sure as hell don't. And that the whole point of this is to have personal development, to learn, to understand, to make sure the same mistakes don't happen again, so you don't get stuck in this victim trap cycle. That is the point of this. Stop acting like the victim. You're not the victim, unless you are. Obviously, there's situations where people are the victims. Of course, I'm not going to put down someone's actual genuine experience if they ever genuinely be a victim, and you will know deep down if you've actually been a victim of something or you haven't. So yeah, you'll know it's not like an issue that's if somebody's had an assault or abuse or something like that, of course you've been a victim and that was horrific. So I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about cases where you're not actually the victim. There is no victim. There is no oppressor. There is no victim. It's just a one-on-one situation. I did have a load of notes to this episode, but I'm sure I've actually just gone off on a major tangent. But, so, how can you overcome this victim trap? Well, it's all about your own agency, looking at yourself, looking at your mistakes you sometimes make and learning from them, as I said. Move on. Don't get stuck in the rut. Don't get stuck in the same space. When you start owning your mistakes, owning your self-development, your self-improvement, it is empowering. And I can say this from personal experience. I used to do this victim thing. I used to act like, woe is me, my life is so terrible. It wasn't. But to me, I really thought it was. And when I started actually taking ownership of this and doing something different, and I started doing this, when was it? It must have been around 2014, 2015. So talking, 9 years ago now? I listened to the audiobook of, because I often listen to audiobooks rather than actually physically read them. The audiobook of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And it was amazing. I highly, highly recommend that book. But it just suddenly got me thinking about how I can change things about myself. I don't need to be stuck in this particular thing, and I can become a better person. I can use these 7 habits to become a highly effective person. And it really, really helps. I cannot recommend that book enough. It's brilliant. If we're discussing books, some other good ones that really, really motivate me and make me feel better. You're a Badass by Jen Sincero. That's amazing. If you're into entrepreneurship in particular, like I am, Chillpreneur by Denise Duffield Thomas, I absolutely loved. But any of her books, to be honest. Lucky Bitch, Get Rich Lucky Bitch. And Chillpreneur, that has recently been kind of added to and is now Chill and Prosper. They are incredible books. Absolutely love them. They make me feel fantastic. But just about kind of ownership and improving yourself. And I think it comes into this is changing your thought patterns. So when something happens, when somebody points out you've made a mistake and corrects you, rather than going, oh, I can't believe they just told me I made that mistake. Oh, I'm such an idiot. What must they think about me? All you have to do, and this is something I actually do, I'm not just BSing you here, is actually go, oh, okay, cool, I'll change that. Oh, cool, I'll rectify that. Oh, I'll make sure I don't make that mistake again. And if someone does sort of keep persisting on it to make you feel bad, just say, well, I'm human. We make mistakes. You make mistakes, I make mistakes, we all make mistakes. It's all part of the human experience, and it's how we learn, how we grow, how we become better. Changing your thought patterns and actually taking action can lead to a lot of personal growth and progress. Self-reflection. I think I said in a previous episode, reflecting on yourself as a person, in the previous episode, we're already on episode 2. Self-reflection, self-awareness is critical in overcoming the victim trap. Sitting down, looking at who you are, looking at the things you don't like about yourself and how you can change them. Being aware of your flaws is not a bad thing. Being aware of your flaws is such an important and empowering thing. And it's incredible. And you need to do it. Because you cannot change your flaws. And you'll always have flaws. Everyone always has flaws. It's the beauty of the human experience and the human condition is that we do have flaws. We're not perfect. And that's great. Because if we're all perfect, how boring would life be? But when you become self-aware of your flaws, that's when you can start doing something about it. Like I said in the previous episode, awareness is the first step to correcting something. To be fair, I don't think there's a lot. So I said I wrote out these notes and I don't think I really need them. I think I'm covering it quite nicely. That was the concern, was I wasn't going to cover everything I wanted to say. But something I've written down here is about exploration of how empathy and compassion can help individuals overcome the victim trap. Give yourself empathy. Have empathy and compassion for other people, and the fact they make mistakes, and the fact they're not perfect. And this is a tough thing. This is something I found quite tough, was when you do start working on self-improvement and improving yourself as a person, it's like when you first give up smoking. If you've never given up smoking, then brilliant. I'm so glad well, if you never smoked in the first place, fantastic. If you haven't given up smoking and you do smoke, give up. Trust me, I saw my father-in-law die of lung cancer, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody. It was absolutely horrific. So don't quit. So basically quit, get past that point. We're off on a tangent. What a surprise. Yes, so it's very easy when you first start on this journey and you start improving to become quite self-righteous and to be quite, not intentionally, but subconsciously judgmental, sometimes intentionally, of other people that aren't there. Everybody's doing everything at their own speed. And if you are kind and compassionate and have empathy towards other people and their own life experiences and the things that make them up as people, you can, bit by bit, help them. Your best thing in life is to be an example. It's the same as when you're raising children. It is better to lead by example than to tell them what they should and shouldn't be doing. And it's the same with this. When you start, just simply, I've actually had people say to me in the past, like, and again, this is totally true, why are you always so upbeat and happy? I'm not always upbeat and happy, but when I'm around other people, I fake it till I make it if I'm not feeling it. But upbeat and happy, well, majority of the point because I haven't really got anything big to be unhappy about. And that goes back to gratitude. And being grateful, as I said in the previous episode, being grateful for what you have really helps with having a positive attitude. But why are you always so positive and happy? Because I have no reason not to be. And because I can be. And from that, other people see that and they sort of see you can be happy. This isn't fake. Some of them will still think it's fake, but that's their funeral. They will see you happy and they'll realise, oh, hang on, it is actually possible to be happy and to be content with yourself as a person. And it's taken a lot of work, but I'm reasonably content with myself as a person. That's why other people's opinions don't bother me too much. I'm nearly 40. I'll be 40 in a few months' time. And I've confirmed who I am as a person so strongly within myself. My values, my morals, my things that are important to me and the things I love. I've cemented them so deeply within me now that nobody can shake who I am as a person. Nobody can make me feel bad about myself. And this is where, again, this self-reflection, what's the word? What were we? Self-reflection, self-development, really. That's where it really, really comes into play, because the more you do this, the stronger you become as yourself, and nobody can make you feel like a bad person because you're not. And trust me, people try because they're in the victim trap. But what was I saying before? Yeah, so they see it. You pass on that energy, that happy energy, onto other people through energy itself, but people see you and they go, oh, do you know what? If she's happy, well, clearly it can be done and I can be happy too. So you don't need to be self-righteous and pushy. It's like when people are vegans, and I'm a vegetarian and I've been a vegan, when they aggressively the activists go into restaurants and start yelling at people for eating meat. That's not going to make somebody become vegan. Little bits of compassion and understanding for the people, understanding of them and their beliefs. If you want somebody to go vegan, number one, they're living their life, so leave them alone. But if you really want someone to become vegan, do it with compassion, do it with understanding, work on their inner self, their, what's the word I'm looking for? The parts of themselves, the child within them a lot of the time. Children love animals and are kinder to animals than adults are a lot of the time, because children are a lot more pure. That child's still in there, so appeal to that child a lot of the time. And that's how it works with personal development and helping people get out of the victim trap. There is a certain element of calling people out on it and saying, like, really, come on, what are you doing? This is the actual situation. you're not a victim on this. But generally, as the expression killing people with kindness, that's how this works. So, main takeaways from this episode. Are you stuck in the victim trap? Are you being manipulated by people stuck in the victim trap? Listen to this episode again if you didn't get it the first time. I'm going to explain the reasons how you can get out of that. So this is a bit of a kind of mess around all over the place episode this week, so sorry about that. But I had a lot to say, a lot of sort of frustration on things. But I hope you enjoyed it and I hope it really helped you. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you all in my next episode next Monday. Have a great week.